Good morning. It is Monday, November 13th, 2 days after the news about Bishop Strickland came down the pipe, and we have a lot of news to cover about that. I'm hopeful that we will be able to move on from this story soon, but I do intend to keep covering this as it develops because we have certainly not heard the last from the good bishop. The reactions you can guess have been across the board. I covered a lot of the negative ones yesterday because I was waiting for some statements from some bishops to come out, and we now have 3 bishops who have released statements. Some of them are fairly short, but most of them aren't. And I kind of want to preface all of this with something said by Tim Flanders over at writing at 1 Peter 5. Let me bring this up on the screen for you to see what I'm talking about here. This is definitely an important. This is a definite thing. I can't actually even read that headline to you, unfortunately. But you know, Rupnik will say gets a parish. Strickland gets removed. The Francis pontificate. Right. This is again. This is something everybody is pointing out about this story. That the apostolic visitation was conducted by men who, by bishops who, when you do even a cursory examination at them, you find out that they were at least helping to sweep away a lot of the Ted McCarrick problems going on in the church. Not even taking care of the problem, just making sure people didn't know about it, or that they were worse than that. And then you get the stories like Rupnik and everything else. All this leads up to Strickland getting punished for saying what some might argue are imprudent statements. Others would call it bold statements. Whatever you choose, whatever it is he said that got him in trouble, including not implementing Traditionis Custodes, it pales in comparison to the men surrounding Francis. So Tim Flanders at 1 Peter 5 described this as the spirit of Vatican I, which we can understand to mean as a distortion of the intentions of the definition of papal infallibility, along with the distortion of the other provisions of the First Vatican Council's texts on the papacy. Mr. Flanders described it this way, quote, "This is the definition of arbitrary power. The reason given is that it is the will of the Pope. This is the definition of bishops being treated as vicars of the Roman pontiff, condemned by Lumen Gentium, a Vatican II document. This is the definition of the spirit of Vatican I. The Catholic Church has become a tyranny of arbitrary power, wielded by the vicar of Logos incarnate. It is the very essence of anti-Logos, voluntarism. What is voluntarist justice? The will of the stronger power over the weaker power. The Pope is not bound by the laws of God or laws of men, canon law, tradition, whatever else may bind him to justice. His will is law. His whim is decree. The Pope says to all laws and customs and obligations to follow charity, non serviam. The Pope says to all justice and due process, non serviam." End quote. With the cry of non serviam in our mind, we're going to start going over what some of these bishops had to say, because Mr. Flanders goes on with a lot of more non serviam kind of statements that we were getting from Francis and company. Okay. This was, call it arbitrary is absolutely correct. So, Father Stephen and Bartow, the ever charitable priest. If Strickland stays away from the likes of you and Matt et al., he will be fine. If he doesn't go down Altman Road, he will be fine. Father, I hope one day you do wake up to what's going on in the church. I really do hope that you see the apostasy being led from the top. Pray for the priest here, please. And don't say nasty things to him, anything nastier than I said. Anyway, let's go on to here, starting with Archbishop Viganò. We will put this one on screen also. He put this on Twitter just several days ago. So here we are from Archbishop Viganò. The removal of His Excellency Bishop Joseph Strickland, especially after the failure to ambush him with the apostolic visitation, appears as a cowardly form of authoritarianism, which in no way fits with Bergoglio's rants about welcoming and inclusiveness. Seeing the sacrilegious and twisted Marco Rupnik incarnated in the Diocese of Capodistrias, or Bishop Michael Olson still in office, that's the one with the nuns in Texas, despite the petition of the faithful of Fort Worth, Following his errors and scandalous behavior with the Carmelite Sisters of Arlington, while one of the few faithful bishops is persecuted and kicked out for no reason, shows us in all its arrogance the tyranny of the Argentine Jesuit, a tyranny that is even more scandalous to the faithful due to the fact that the majority of the pastors are silent out of cowardice or complicity. This affair will reveal who stands with the true Church of Christ and who chooses to stand with his declared enemies. To remain silent and endure this upteenth violation of the most basic principles of justice and truth is to make oneself complicit with a subverter. End quote from Archbishop Carlo Maria Viganò. Thank you for the super chat, it seems. It is greatly appreciated. That is what we're dealing with here. That's what Archbishop Viganò has to say on the matter, and I think it's a not incorrect take at all. Let's move on though to Bishop to what Bishop Athanasius Schneider has to say on the matter, because his take is, as you might expect, a little more verbose than that and a little more measured, but it's essentially the same sentiment. So, from LifeSite headline, Bishop Strickland's removal is a blatant injustice, says Bishop Schneider. The deposition of Bishop Joseph Strickland signifies a black day for the Catholic Church of our day, wrote Bishop Schneider. So, it's not a super long statement, and so I'll just give you the whole thing here, okay? Quote, the one charge which is now sure to secure severe punishment is the careful keeping of the traditions of the fathers. These words of St. Basil can most aptly illustrate the deposition of Bishop of Tyler, Texas, USA, His Excellency Joseph E. Strickland. The deposition of Bishop Joseph Strickland signifies a black day for the Catholic Church of our day. We're witnessing a blatant injustice towards a bishop who did his duty in preaching and defending with parrhesia the immutable Catholic faith and morals, and in promoting the sacredness of the liturgy, especially in the immemorial traditional rite of the Mass. All understand, and even the declared enemies of this confessor bishop, that the accusations brought against him are ultimately insubstantial and disproportionate, and were used as a welcome opportunity to silence an uncomfortable prophetic voice within the Church. What happened to the bishops during the Arian crisis in the 4th century, who were deposed and exiled only because they intrepidly preached the traditional Catholic faith, is again happening in our day. At the same time, several bishops who publicly support heresy, liturgical abuse, the fleshly ideology, and openly invite their priests to bless the James Martin pairings are not in the least importuned or sanctioned by the Holy See, meaning they're not even punished at all, not even slapped on the wrist. Bishop Strickland will probably go down in history as an Athanasius of the Church in the USA, who, however, unlike St. Athanasius, is not persecuted by the secular power, but incredibly by the Pope himself. It seems that a kind of purge of bishops who are faithful to the immutable Catholic faith and the apostolic discipline, and which has been going on already for some time, has reached now a decisive phase. May the sacrifice which our Lord asked from Bishop Strickland bear plenty spiritual fruits for time and eternity. Bishop Strickland and other faithful bishops who are already asked to resign, who are currently marginalized, or who will be the next in the row, should say in all sincerity to Pope Francis, Holy Father, why are you persecuting and beating us? We tried to do what all holy popes asked us to do. With fraternal love, we offer the sacrifice of this kind of persecution and exile for the salvation of your soul and for the good state of the Holy Roman Church. Indeed, we are your best friends, most Holy Father. That was Bishop Athanasius Schneider. Thank you, Miriam, for the super sticker. It is appreciated. This is one of those, what we're seeing here is the voices you expect to come out, but these are all very influential bishops. And I want some people to really ponder this question. They are going to turn their sights next on other bishops. I have a story for you already, how you're seeing that against Cardinal Müller, even though he's retired. So I'm not sure what they can do to him. But you're seeing that with Cardinal Müller. People are openly asking if Bishop Schneider will be next. Chat asks, genuine question I've had, should the anathema be brought back? Why did we stop declaring heretics anathema? We need a holy pope to clear the trash. Father James Martin et al. That they should have been booted. There's a simple reason for that. The only times you see anathemas brought back are really against people who are too traditional. Okay. You haven't had an attempt to really address heresy in the church since Vatican II in a real way. I know there have been a few examples that you can point to, and that's fine, but heresy is a major problem in the church right now, and it's coming from the very top, and no one is wanting to address this problem. Bellator asks, Schneider's next to be stripped of his diocese. Well, he's an auxiliary bishop and he's an assistant bishop, which actually makes it even easier to punish him. Burke was fired a long time ago. He used to be he used to run the Order of Malta, the Knights Order of Malta, and then he has no job now, and he's getting close to retirement age. Good morning to you, Chop Gooda. Thanks for coming in. Even if you're late, I do recommend checking this out from the beginning because we did cover already Viganò and then Schneider here. Thank you for the super sticker, Richard. It is appreciated. We're now going to go on to the statement from Cardinal Gerhard Müller. This is again, Müller is going to be fairly measured in how he says things, which is what you would expect. But again, his words tend to matter because he is a moderate. And his statement here is on screen. It's very short. Cardinal Müller on Strickland's sacking. It's an abuse of the divine right of the episcopate, as published by Rorate Celli. When my daily news video goes live here in about 40 minutes, you'll be able to find the sources for the live stream included with that in that post at returntotradition.org, so you can read these for yourself. If you're watching this later than after the live stream, good morning to you. You'll be able to find these at returntotradition.org. So here's Cardinal Müller's short statement. What is being done to Bishop Strickland is terrible, an abuse of the divine right of the episcopate. If I could advise Monsignor Strickland, he should absolutely not resign, because then they could wash their hands of his innocence. Note from Rorate Celli, which is why Strickland refused to resign and was then forced out, because that's what happened. Remember, they called him on like Thursday the 9th and asked him to resign, and he said no, which is why the letter came down Saturday. According to the commandment of justice, a bishop can only be removed by the Pope if he has been guilty of something evil. Heresy, schism, apostasy, crime, or a totally non-priestly behavior. That's Ted McCarrick level types of problems. For example, the pseudo-benediction that insults God and deceives people about their salvation. Blessing people of opposite or the same flesh in extramarital relationships. Arbitrarily dismissal from the post of bishop of a diocese in which a bishop is established by Christ himself as his own shepherd undermines the Pope's authority, as happened historically with the unworthy bargaining for the office under the Avignon papacy. This loss of trust was one of the main reasons for the Reformation's separation of Christianity from the Catholic Church and its hatred of the Pope, who by his arbitrary actions had put himself in God's place. Note that Cardinal Müller here is pointing that there can be much bigger consequences than anybody thinks about for these kind of actions, because again, Strickland was not the first. This happened to Cardinal Burke. This happened to Bishop Fernandez Torres down in Puerto Rico. This has happened to a fair number of bishops. According to the Catholic teaching, the Pope is in no way the Lord of the Church, but rather as Christ's representative for the universal Church, the first servant of his Lord, who was to say to Simon Peter, who had just become the rock of the Church, "Get thee behind me, for thou thinkest not what God wills, but what men will." See Matthew chapter 16, verse 23. This is a citation from the 16th chapter of Matthew we tend to forget. The Pope has no authority from Christ to intimidate and bully good bishops modeled on Christ the Good Shepherd, who, in accordance with the episcopal ideal of Vatican II, sanctify, teach, and shepherd God's flock in Christ's name, simply because false friends denounce these good bishops to Francis as enemies of the Pope, while heretical and immoral bishops can do as they please or disturbs Christ's church every day with some other nonsense. That's a letter from Cardinal Burke, or Cardinal Müller, rather. We'll check here live here in a minute, actually, right as we're doing this, to see if Cardinal Burke has anything up. I will just tell you right now, this is getting a lot of attention from all the bishops you expect, and there probably will be more. Super chat for, I think, big $20 super chat from Sel Brown. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you. Strict is rigid. To have a Strickland would have to be a Rigidland. So Strickland was a no-go from the start. There is something, sometimes in life you see these kinds of things where, people's names actually weirdly work with this. And you may have pointed to that with Bishop Strickland, unfortunately for him. But was it imprudent to read that letter? I think even his biggest supporters say maybe it was not the best idea to read that famous letter, but maybe he knew it was already too late and he did it anyway, because he did that after the apostolic visitation. And the apostolic visitation, clearly from eyewitness accounts there say the apostolic, the decision for him to be removed was made before he got there. So now I'm going to go check Cardinal Burke just to see if, since I've gone live, if he's got anything, because Burke is someone who I do expect to hear from him on this as well. But no, he hasn't actually published anything since August, and no publicly available things from Cardinal Burke. But that's where we are, folks. We have Müller, Schneider, and Viganò coming to Bishop Strickland's defense. There will be more in the coming days, I suspect. And this is all happening while other really major things are happening as well. Michael Kern for the super chat. Thank you, sir. It is appreciated. There is other things happening right now that this is taking, that weirdly that this is distracting from, and this is why my news videos that I keep making, not videos that are not about this at all. For instance, today we're going to talk about, in about half an hour from the time I'm recording this, we thought the German bishops were done with their synodal way. Turns out they're not. They're reconvening and pushing forward with their heresies. There are serious implications to that, because the two richest countries in the world in terms of how much money are given to the Vatican are the United States and Germany. This is why there's so much attention paid to the United States, not just because of our size and the influence in the world, but because of how much money the church in the United States gives to Rome. And that is where we are facing today. So tune in for that when that goes live shortly. And that's the other thing looming over this. This has been pointed out that he was removed just before the USCCB meeting. And there's two reasons, I think, for that. This is not a coincidence. How many will address this at the conference? I would be surprised if anybody did. There's two ways to think about how this was done. Either we'll go with the more charitable one first. The more charitable one was Francis believed that Strickland needed to be removed, and he decided to do so before the conference so that he couldn't be a bad influence there. That's the charitable interpretation. I think the more realistic one is, as I said in my live stream yesterday, that getting rid of Bishop Strickland was sending a message, and this is a message to the USCCB. Francis has had a lot of negative things to say about the U.S. bishops. And so here they are going to be meeting behind closed doors. This is one of those times where I wonder, in years past, Church Militant has gone to these and put cameras in people's faces. Anybody know if they're doing that this year? I'm curious. I don't know. So it would be curious to see if that happens. And if anybody, any independent journalists who I can't afford to go down to Maryland. Not right now, not to Baltimore. Going to be sticking cameras in their faces, though. This needs to happen. People need to ask them, what do you think about this? I'd like to see what Supich has to say. You know what he'll say, but I'd like to see it anyway. I want to see what Cardinal McElroy has to say. You know what he'll say, but I want to see them say it publicly, that this was deserved and it's an unfortunate tragedy, but opposition to the Holy Father, all that stuff. I want to see them say it, but I want to see, because Cardinal DiNardo put something out, and it was just a reiteration, essentially, of the letter that Rome put out. I didn't even bother reading it to you because it's just the same declaration, except in longer form. But it's very milquetoast. But it is weird, isn't it? All three of the letters that I've written to you, this public statements from cardinals and bishops defending Bishop Strickland, one was from a German in Kazakhstan, one was from a German, and one was from an Italian. There are three, not a single American bishop. Think about that for a moment, because there are good bishops in the United States. Many of them are keeping their head down. I will be paying attention to see if Cardinal Zen does speak about this. I can never remember the name of his website, but he has his own blog, and he tends to publish things there. It's called "For the Love of Truth, I Will Not Remain Silent." But the last thing he published was something about Cardinal Parolin right around All Hallows Eve. So Traditionalist Catholic says, I think that his deposition was a message to the episcopate, shut up and toe the line. I think that's correct. Remember, one of the reasons that it came out that he was removed for was failure to implement Traditionis Custodes. In the United States, there's a number of bishops who have either not implemented it or not implemented it correctly. So that's part of this too. But you do see sometimes bishops make offhanded kind of, without naming Francis, they will make statements that are clearly directed about him in a negative way. Linda Chris says it's both, meaning both to sideline him so he can't be a negative, potentially negative influence at the coming USCCB meeting, but also to send a message. And I think that's probably fair. Did Francis act like this as Archbishop in Argentina? Well, this is where I remind people that he has this book that there's a book written by a professional Francis fan fiction writer by the name of Austin Ivere. It's the biography of Francis. And I've actually forgotten the name of it. So I'm going to look it up now and I'm going to find it. But with this book, you do not buy any edition other than the first, which means you need to find it used, because the first edition told too much. Yes, it's The Great Reformer, published in 2014 by Austin Ivere. The Great Reformer. If you read that book, the first edition, there's a lot it talks about in the time Francis was running things in Argentina. And it's not positive. It says too much. It tells too much. How much he liked the regime in Argentina at the time, how close he was with them, how he treated the priests there. I mean, it's revealing to the point where future versions of the book refuse to have that in it. They pulled it out. They actually edited it down. So you have to find a first edition of The Great Reformer by Austin Ivere. In the chat, Karen D'Souza says there has to be transparency at the USCCB meeting. Doubt they would want this to happen, though. I want them to be. I really want somebody who has the means to do so with a web presence to go down there and put cameras in their face and ask them, look, one of your brother bishops was just removed for what many are calling arbitrary, and frankly, some are even saying non-canonical reasons. There have been articles now being published by canon lawyers that I'm going to be looking at this week, talking about how this may not have been legal canonically. Christo J, thanks me for the work. I appreciate everybody who's tuning in and watching, as always, and for the kind words. What has Archbishop Cordileone been doing or saying ever since he enforced denial of communion to that woman politician? Any support from him? He hasn't said anything about Bishop Strickland yet. And I do remember reporting how right after that story broke, a year ago now, I think, he then issued some very pro-Francis statements, just to make it, which almost seemed like he wanted everyone to know he was, on the right side of things, as it were. Yeah, the first edition is much longer than the second edition. You got to get that first edition book. There's something off about Ivere. There really is. Why wouldn't His Excellency press for canonical trial? I don't know. That is something I'd like to see asked of him by somebody who's close to him and would be better at asking him diplomatically. I think John Henry Weston he's very good at diplomatically asking hard questions of people. And that would be one I'd like to see maybe him ask him. Father Gerald Murray may have an interesting take coming up. That will be worth watching. It's going to be that's the other thing to watch. This happened on Saturday. Raymond Arroyo sent some things on Twitter about this. I really want to know what the papal posse is going to be saying about this, which I think they're doing this tonight. Okay. Church Militant will be in Baltimore and do a live stream. Okay. We'll see how this goes then. Anyway, folks, I think we're going to wrap this up here. I'm curious if there are any other final questions. This is your time to ask them, and I will do my best to address them. And then I will try to get these sources up on my sources site so you can read these art letters for yourself easily. And then make sure we go to and tune into that video today about what's going on in Germany, because that's big, that they are reconvening the German synodal way and just pushing forward. And what they say is just remarkable. Anyway, folks, looks like no more questions. I do see your comment, Bellator. I try not to stir the pot too much with other Catholic groups right now. So, but I do see what you're saying. We'll leave it with this comment here from Andrew Daniels: to stand against those nuns, we'll call them those fake nuns, when no other bishop would. That might be part of it, honestly. Thank you, Linda, and God bless you and everybody who tuned in today. So check out my video going live in about 20 minutes from the time this is ending. Thanks, folks. God bless you.